This is a content trigger warning. On this episode, we will be discussing suicide and mental health issues like depression. Please make the best decision for your emotional and mental health when choosing whether or not to listen to this episode. If you need resources or support, please call or text 988. Help is available 24/7, 365. Please take care of all parts of yourself. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Let's get into it. Welcome to the Kandid shop. We speaking on things you not. Just press play and let it rock. Welcome to the Kandid shop. Whoa. Welcome to the Kandid shop. We speaking on things you not. Just press play and let it rock. Welcome to the Kandid shop. Feel like we going through mad things. Gotta keep it real when they choose not. We gon' talk about it when the news drop. Welcome to the show where you know we don't fake this. Keep your opinion to yourself if it don't make sense.
Hey, Podcast Nation, it's your girl, Candidly Kristen, and this is the Kandid Shop, your number one destination for candid conversations. Joining me for an important discussion on suicide and depression is suicide prevention speaker and comedian Frank King, aka the mental health comedian. Frank has fought a lifetime battle with depression and chronic suicidality and has turned that long, dark journey into eight TEDx talks and insights on mental health awareness. So welcome, Frank, to the Kandid Shop.
And I should tell everybody who's listening that you may hear some ambient sounds. I'm at the airport. I'm wearing a noise canceling headset, but it doesn't cancel all the noise. Kristen, if you wonder, what's that noise? Are they boarding planes? Is that what's going on?
He is at the airport, guys, going to do what he does best, some comedy. So,
yes.
But right now, on a cruise ship, y'all, what a life. I'm going to be you when I grow up, Frank. But we're going to have a Kandid and Frank chat today.
Hey!
So,
Love the
I'm a
word,
stats. Yes, I'm a stats girl. So I just wanted to throw out a few stats. So the number and rates of suicides in the U.S. has increased 4% from 2020 to 2021 after 2 consecutive years of decline in 2019 and 2020. In 2020, 45,979 Americans died by suicide. Suicide is the 12th leading cause of death in the U.S. There is one suicide death in the U.S. every 11.5 minutes. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-old Americans. And there is one suicide death for every estimated 25 suicide attempts. And I also wanted to throw in some stats about mental health. So 11.7% of adults age 18 or over experience regular feelings of worry, nervousness, or anxiety, and 4.8% of adults age 18 or over experience regular feelings of depression. So those stats are not to me because mental health and suicide and depression is my thing, so they don't surprise me, but that is a lot of people dying by their own hand. So Frank, could you just really briefly talk to me and my listeners and tell us who Frank King is and how you came to do what you...
Before we do that, Chris, we should give them the good news, and here's the good news.
All right, love good news.
8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent, meaning they cannot make up their minds. 9 out of 10 give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt, which means the vast majority of people want to be saved. The vast majority of people can be saved. You can make a difference. You can save a life, and you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here, and that is starting the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, because those were a lot of depressing stats. So,
yeah.
So tell us who Frank King is.
In 9th grade, I told a joke. Ninth grade. I was 9 years old. I was in 4th grade. Told my first joke. The kids laughed. The teacher was so hysterical. She had to excuse herself to go to the teacher's lounge. And I decided at that moment I was going to be a stand-up comedian. 12th grade, There was a talent show. And I won. Of course, the competition wasn't that stiff. There were international folk dancers and an accordion player. So it really wasn't a difficult win. I told my mama I'm going to be a comedian. And she said, son, you're going to college first. I don't care what you do when you get done, but you're going to go to college first. I don't care if you become a goat herder. You're going to be a goat herder with a college degree. So I went to UNC Chapel Hill, got a couple of college degrees, and then My high school sweetheart and I moved to San Diego. I worked for an insurance company, started working right there for an insurance company. They had an office in San Diego, and they transferred us there.
Okay.
And there's a comedy store, a branch of the world-famous comedy store on Sunset in L.A., and when I did my first open mic night, that was the beginning of the end of my insurance career and the beginning of my comedy career. I'm on stage doing my first 5 minutes on April 1st, 1984. April Fool's Day, very appropriate.
Yeah.
Halfway through my set, I heard this inside my head, "You're home." And I made a decision at that moment that I was going to do it for a living. I had no idea how. And here's the deal. I've threatened for many years to write a keynote called "What Could You Do If You Didn't Know No Better?" Because I had no idea how hard it was. But I said to my girlfriend, now my wife of 35 years,
Nice.
in December of 85, I said, "Look, I'm going on the road to be a professional stand-up comedian. Would you like to come along?" Figuring she'd go, "Oh, heck no." She goes, "Yeah." So we gave up our jobs and our apartment and packed everything into my tiny Dodge Colt that we could fit. And we were on the road together for 2,629 nights in a row. 2,629 nights nonstop, no home. And I worked with Seinfeld and Dennis Miller and Kevin James and Adam Sandler and Ron White, Jeff Foxworthy and Rosie and Alan and Steve Harvey back when they were just comics on the road. It was an amazing time to be. Opened up for Lou Rawls, 2 shows on New Year's Eve at the Hotel Del. You'll never find another.
Yes.
Opened up for Randy Travis one weekend, 5,000 people each night.
Nice. So
rush.
You used to be a writer for SNL?
No, I was a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years.
For The Tonight Show. So what was that like?
Jay Leno was the permanent guest host for Johnny Carson. And Johnny would say to his staff on a Friday night, "I'm taking next week off," which meant Jay had 4 nights, Tuesday through Friday. He had to do a monologue each night, 18 jokes per monologue. That's a lot of comedy to write over the weekend. So he started hiring under contract road comedians like me to submit topical jokes, stuff out of the newspaper. And so I signed up, and I was sending in 12 to 24 jokes a day. I probably got 1 or 2 in each week. And then when he got the job from Johnny for real, he let most of the contract labor go, but he kept us on. Okay. And I rode that with him until he left for CNBC.
Okay. All right. Listen, I'm a Tonight Show fan. My grandmother used to watch it. I've been a Tonight Show fan for a long time. So when did you...
Okay. How old's your grandmother?
She would have been in her 90s if she was still living.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, you said 65 for that. I go, I could be your grandfather.
Oh, God. Don't make me laugh. So listen, Frank, how did you shift the narrative for yourself and in general around depression and suicide? And when did you begin to intersect humor as a healing tool, a tool of awareness? How did that all come to be?
I was on the road. I was doing stand-up. And actually, if you go back in time when I was married to my first wife, I was married to my first wife and miserable. She's a wonderful woman, but we didn't belong together. We had nothing in common. But what they say, opposites attract. She was pregnant, I wasn't. And I was selling insurance, which I hated with a passion. And I was not going to open mic night because my first wife didn't like that idea. And that's when I had my first thoughts of suicide. I realized if I didn't start pursuing comedy, which is what I believed I was born to do, sooner rather than later, I was going to kill myself. My second thought was, I could divorce my wife, quit my job, try comedy. If it works, great. If it doesn't, shoot, I can still kill myself. That's how I got into comedy. I had nothing to lose. That got me into comedy. And when I got into comedy, having seen a lot of motivational speakers when I worked in the insurance business, old school guys, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Tony Alessandro, I thought to myself as I'm watching them, I could do that if I just had something to teach people. When the last recession hit, 2007, 2008, 2009, the corporate comedy business dropped off 80% overnight. And my wife and I lost everything we'd worked for in 25 years in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Okay. And that's when I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like.
Oh, wow.
Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. Yeah, a friend of mine came up after a keynote recently because he'd never heard me say I didn't pull the trigger. And he said this, "Hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I go, "Hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" Anyway, after that happened and when speaking came back, meeting planners and speakers bureau said to me, "Frank, we love you, but we can't pay you $5,000 anymore for just jokes. You got to teach the audience something," which I had secretly wanted to have something to teach the audience. I wanted to make a living and a difference, but I had no idea how.
Okay.
So a friend of mine named Judy Carter, C-A-R-T-E-R, wrote a book called The Message of You. Turn Your Life into a Money-Making Speaking Career. which is exactly what she'd done. She'd been a comic magician and then a comedian and then a speaker, and she'd been doing it for years, and she wrote the book.
Okay.
So she said, Frank, let me send you a copy of the book. So I got the book thinking I got nothing. About halfway through, because she walks you through the process of finding what she calls your heart story.
Okay.
Halfway through, I realized, oh, Lord, I do have something to teach. Because I looked at my family and their mental health status, more nuts in my family than in a squirrel turd. And the fact that I came so close to killing myself and I live with 2 mental illnesses, I thought if I get some training in suicide prevention, I could keynote on that. I could make a difference. So I got the training. Now, second problem. I've been a comedian for 25 years. Everybody in the conference booking business that I know knows me as a comedian, a funny guy. How do I rebrand? And my wife said famously, do a TEDx. And I said famously, what's a TEDx? And she told me. And just by chance, I got an email that week from a TEDx event in British Columbia saying, listen, we're taking applications. Would you like to apply? So I did, and I got it on my first try. Spoiled. Nice. And I went up on stage at age 52, and nobody in my family knew. None of my friends knew. My wife didn't know that I was living with 2 mental illnesses because people with mental illness often are very good at covering up. So I decided I would come out of the mental health closet on stage in the TEDx. And I did. Yep. And the theme of the TEDx was start the conversation, break the silence, break the stigma. So I was breaking my silence. I was coming out and saying I have major depressive disorder and chronic suicidality. And a couple of other TEDx events saw the video, liked my style, and contacted me and said, hey, do you have any other mental health topics, different TEDx topics? And I said, yeah. So I got 2 more by invitation.
Okay.
And then that's 3. And then the next 1, 2, 3, 4 I applied for. The 4th one, I didn't have to audition. They liked the title and idea so much. The title was Suicide, the Secret About Success, Dead Man Talking, which is about the story of how I got into comedy. They said, no, you don't have to audition, man. We like the title. You're on. And the 5th one was my favorite, which was Mental Health in the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly. And you can imagine what it's all about. And they loved it. And they said, you don't have to audition. You just come on up. Yeah, it opens up like this. I love my iPhone, but I got to tell you, it is my second favorite handheld device. And it was on from there. My only standing ovation.
My God.
Is the first one I've ever gotten a standing ovation for. My 6th one I applied for and got, but they had contacted me to apply, so it's a half invite. My 7th one I applied and got it. And my 8th one, the one I'm getting ready to do now, I have a huge presence on LinkedIn. I had a LinkedIn marketing company over a year ago. In the last year, I've had 4.3 million views on my posts. I come up high in the searches, so they said, we saw your TEDx talks. We like the idea that you talk about there are some positive aspects to mental illness. What happened was I did a talk called Mental Benefits, the evolutionary advantages of mental illness, because I kept bumping into people who had a mental challenge but had some other extraordinary ability. And I thought, this cannot be a coincidence. So I did some research, and if you look at the laundry list of politicians, athletes, movie stars, singers that have Kanye West. Okay, I'm not a big fan of Kanye, but he is arguably one of the musical geniuses of his generation. Too bad he's not also a PR genius, but he lives with bipolar disorder. So they like the fact that I talked about. So my 8th TEDx talk is called I'm Not Broken. I was made this way. And the premise is, I believe my depression and thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my comedic ability, imagination, and creativity. It's the same brain, so it's got to be part and parcel of the same thing. So that's what they said, nobody ever talks about the positive aspects of mental illness except you. That's how I got the 8th one.
Let me ask you this. How do the people at large and in general take to your comedic stance on, I'm doing air quotes, such a serious topic as mental health and suicide? Well, have you found people open to it?
Not only open to it, they booked me because of it. I got a call from a speakers bureau this week, and the Montana Hospital Association wanted a suicide prevention speaker, and they thought a little comic relief would be great. And somebody goes, hey, there's a mental health comedian. So they contacted the speakers bureau and said, we want Frank King.
Nice.
And so they booked me not only because I'm a suicide prevention speaker and I have the lived experience with mental illness, but also that I have funny personal anecdotes. A guy called me the other day and he goes, Frank, I'm sorry I called you late. I didn't mean to leave you hanging. And I said, would you like to rephrase that? Yeah.
And you know what? While you're talking and I'm laughing, I'm thinking, oh, this is not funny, but it is. So, how much of a role do you believe personally that mental health issues play in actual suicides or attempted suicides? Is it a big role, a small role, or is suicide something that stands alone, irrespective of mental health issues?
No, it is most often, I think the number one cause of suicides, at the heart of a suicide, is depression. And the depressive phase of bipolar disorder is even more dangerous than garden variety depression.
Okay.
Now, there are people who, what they call situationally, they get situationally depressed because of a bankruptcy or a divorce or flunking out of
Okay.
college. And so there's no diagnosed mental illness involved. They just
Right.
decide, I can't go on. So
Right.
there's a slice of it where it's simply situational and impulse driven, and they take their lives, sadly.
I was doing my research and stuff, trying to prep for this chat, and I came across a term that I had never heard before, and I'm not often stumped by words: suicide contagion. And
Yes.
it was defined as the exposure to suicide or suicidal behaviors within a family, peer group, or through media that can result in increases in suicide and suicidal behaviors. I had never, ever heard that term before.
Yeah, they call them suicide clusters. You often see it, say, in a high school, where one person,
Hmm.
young person, dies by suicide, and then all of a sudden two, and then three. In my family, when my mother and I found my great aunt, and she died by suicide. And the story is, I'll tell you the story, but you need to warn the listeners, it is horror movie horrible.
Okay.
If you're that close to an actual suicide, and when you hear the story, you'll think you couldn't have gotten much closer. The chances of you seriously considering taking your life later in your life go up. You're
Wow.
already hardwired for it, and you're close to suicide like that. And sure enough, it happened. It was situational in that we filed bankruptcy. In maybe I told you, in suicidality, one of the three legs of the three-legged stool of suicidality is something called burdensomeness. The world would be better off without me. And I
Okay.
knew that I had $1 million life insurance policy, and that my wife, I could restore her financially. So she would be brokenhearted, but she would certainly be financially better off. I was worth more dead than alive. That's
Okay.
why I was considering taking my life. Yeah, and if, like I said, in a school or in a community, if someone dies by suicide, I don't think that there's a correlation or causation. Maybe a
Right.
correlation, certainly a connection.
Okay.
If somebody does
Got
it,
it.
and if you're a young person, somebody doesn't get a great deal of attention, there is some science that makes it easier, more attractive for the next young person to do that. So the jury's not in on all of that yet, but there is some
Okay.
connection somewhere.
So, is there a genetic predisposition for suicide? Is it inherited or hereditary?
You're listening to him. Yes, in my family, it's generational depression and suicide. And I've got a friend who's a therapist. She has a client where suicide goes back 5 generations.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. DNA is not necessarily destiny.
Right.
Just because you have it in your DNA doesn't mean you're going to die by suicide. Just high cholesterol. Just because your folks passed on high cholesterol to you, and maybe your folks have heart disease. There are things you can do, live a healthy lifestyle,
Yeah.
and take your medication. And so it's not necessarily, like I said, DNA is not necessarily destiny, whether it's physical or mental health.
Okay.
So,
I agree. So, let me just pivot a little bit because the holiday season is upon us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about holiday blues and seasonal affective disorder and the increase in instances of depression and suicides during the holiday season.
yeah, I've never seen a comprehensive study showing that that suicides actually go up during the holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas. There may be a connection, and it may just be, as you said, seasonal affective disorder. The days are
Mhm.
shorter and colder and darker. And I live in Oregon. And right now in Oregon in November, the sun comes up at 7:07, 7:08, and goes down about 4:07. So it's a short
Mhm.
day.
Yep.
And there are people who move into the Northwest. They cannot stand the winter because of the short days, and they move out the next year. Or they have to go down to Arizona for a week or two to stock up on vitamin
For
D.
some sun.
Yeah. So it may not be the holidays so much and loneliness. It may be the seasonal, the short days, cold days. I lived in Southern California for 11 years. I've had my share of sunshine. Sunshine depresses me. I have reverse seasonal disorder. I love short, cold, wet days.
Oh my. I live on the East Coast, so we get all this. So right now it's similar. Sun is up at 6:30, it's setting at 4. It's I don't like it. I do notice my mood changes. I'm not depressed per se, but I miss the being able to sit outside when I get off work and so forth. But
Here's the thing. As someone who lives with depression, if the sun goes down at 4 o'clock, if I'm depressed that day and the sun goes down at 4, I believe it is socially acceptable if it's dark to go to bed, no matter what hour it is.
that's how I feel. I'm like, it's dark. I should be sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me how you feel about, air quotes, rational suicide, assisted suicide amongst people that are terminally ill and in situations like that.
We live in Oregon, and that's one of the reasons. Death with dignity, assisted suicide, so that people can determine. We were talking about this morning. My wife and I have a friend whose husband lived with cancer 8 years, in remission, out, and it finally got to the point where there was nothing left they could do for him. So he was allowed to design his cocktail. Now, you have to get the clearance of a physician and a mental health professional, and you have to be terminal. You have to genuinely be very much a short timer. The irony of that is people who have that authority over their own bodies tend to live longer and have a better quality of life than people who don't have that option because I believe because they're in control. They know they can end the pain anytime. And so they live longer and better, ironically, in states where you have assisted suicide.
Okay. All right. And Oregon is one of those states.
Yes. And if you ever had a relative decline and go through the chemo and the radiation and the ups and the downs and pain and died slowly, I believe you would probably be in favor of, okay, this is crazy. Treat an animal that way. You'll put the animal down when it was in that much pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Frank, give my listeners some warning signs. If someone that they know or love, what can they look for in terms of suicidal ideations, or are there signs, red flags?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Before we do that, my chronic suicidal ideation is rare. And what it means is for me and people in my tribe, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And I tell the audience, when I say small, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts, unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. And it sounds absurd, I know, but almost every time I've spoken since 2014 and have told that story, there's been at least one person in the audience, sometimes more, chronic suicidal ideation, and invariably they do not know it has a name. They think they're just some kind of freak and all alone. I had a young woman come up after a college presentation and say, thanks for your keynote. I said, you're welcome. She said, but I got to tell you, it made me weep. I said, how did it make you weep? She goes, you know your story about the car? Get it fixed, buy a new and kill yourself? I go, yeah. She goes, I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know that had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak and completely alone. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I am not alone, and I wept. So there may be somebody listening to this right now who has chronic suicidal ideation, and they have just realized that A, it's a thing, B, it has a name, C, they're not alone. So that's the power of sharing your story. Absolutely. You give other people. And that's one of the reasons I don't kill myself, because I feel like George Bailey in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. I've been shown what people's lives might have been like if I were not there, simply to reassure them that they're not alone. And if I kill myself, conceivably, I would take a lot of those people with me. So that's one of the reasons I hang around. So let's talk about depression. 3 top signs to my mind are 1, eat too much or can't eat, sleep too much or can't sleep. They have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, so they're often late for work or school, but they rally in the afternoon almost like a different person. And the third one, this is observable visibly, they let their personal hygiene go. Usually they're pretty well put together, but this day their hair is dirty, clothes aren't quite so clean. It may be because they're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning. Run a little wash, take a shower. The question always comes up, what do you say to somebody who is depressed? Here's what you don't say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn this around upside down. Have you tried fish oil? Yeah. Yeah. Here's what you do say. I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not lazy or crazy or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. Here's the good news. With time and treatment, things will get better. I will take the time. I'll help you get the treatment. And here's the tough one. You have to ask them in no uncertain terms, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that. There's an urban legend you should never mention the S word in front of somebody who's depressed because it might give them the idea, which is absurd.
Yeah, because they've got it already.
Yeah, why didn't I think of that? As a matter of fact, mentioning it in front of them will lower the chances of them dying by suicide, ironically. Now,
really?
Yep. Let's say they admit they're depressed and they say they are suicidal. But first, what if they deny they're suicidal, but your intuition says they are? How would you know? They talk about death and dying a lot. You catch them Googling how to die. Death and dying appears as a theme in their artwork or their music. They're acquiring the means stockpiling medication or buying a firearm. They're getting their affairs in order, especially if they're giving away prized possessions because they want to make sure the possessions go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone.
Got it.
Here's a counterintuitive one that's really dangerous. They've been depressed forever, and now they're happy for no reason. You can't figure out why they're happy, but you're glad they're happy. They may be happy because they've chosen time, place, and method, and they know the pain is coming to an end. See, suicide is most often not about wanting to kill yourself. I didn't want to kill myself. I simply wanted to end the pain. But let's say they do say, they're honest. I am having thoughts of suicide. What do you say? You say, do you have a plan? If they have a plan, you say, what is your plan? And if it's detail, time, place, and method, you need to do your best to get them to a mental health facility simply for evaluation.
Okay.
Now, there's one more step. Suppose they have a plan, but it's not really detailed. What would you do? And I've never read this anywhere. I came up with this on my own. I would say to them, okay, look, let me ask you this. Are you going to kill yourself? If they say no, I say, okay, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever is keeping them here, because something is keeping them there. Could be kids, could be wife, could be pets, could be their religion forbids it. Whatever it is, you can use that to leverage to keep them here.
Okay. And if somebody has a plan, time, place, method, all that in place, and you do all you can as the friend, the loved one, whatever, and they still go through with it and all of your best efforts didn't work, what do you say to those people? I knew it was coming. I tried to stop it.
Well,
what do you say?
8 out of 10 people are ambivalent, meaning 2 out of 10 are not. 9 out of 10 give hints, meaning 1 out of 10 does not. So we can't save everybody. I didn't give hints. I wasn't ambivalent. No, I would not have said anything to anybody. I was just going to do it. So unfortunately, we can't save everybody. The good news is we can save the majority of people if you know what to look and listen for. And now your listeners know exactly what to listen for and how to start the conversation.
And all that's going to be in the show notes, okay? Every bit of it. Every point you should look for and listen to, or look for or listen out for, is going to be in the show notes. So, Frank.
Now, one last thing. If they're suicidal and they have a plan and they refuse to go see a mental health clinician for evaluation, 2 things. If they're in immediate danger to themselves or somebody else, you have to dial 911 and get the law enforcement involved, which means they're probably going to get a 3-day involuntary detention. They're going to unfringe on Facebook for that, but they'll still be alive. The second thing is, if they're not in immediate danger to themselves, but they won't go seek help, my advice would be for you to dial 988, the new 3-digit suicide prevention lifeline number. And the volunteer on the other end will help you as best they can to get the phone in the hand of the person who's in crisis. They will guide you about what to say and do as a last effort.
Okay. I tell you, I appreciate your approach to this topic. I appreciate you for being here and doing what you do. And I'd like for you to give your last thoughts, your last advice, your last offering to my listeners right now.
When I speak, I try to empower the audience, make them the hero in the piece. So I finish up by saying, you can make a difference. You can save a life. And you can do it by doing something as simple as what we're doing right here. And that is starting a conversation. If you know how, and now you know how.
Now you know how. You hear that, guys? You all know how, or at least you got some tools. If somebody, if somebody you love, you have some real tools to work with in your toolbox. So, Frank, I appreciate you so much for sharing this time. You're in the airport doing a podcast episode, so I appreciate you. I am, again, so glad that you are still here with us and doing the things that you do and sharing your stories, your humor, your laughter with the world. I appreciate you, Morty.
You want to know the real reason, the number one reason I'm still here?
Why?
My mom and dad wanted children desperately. My mother had trouble getting pregnant. But my mom got pregnant. She carried it to term. And shortly after birth, it passed away. A year later, she got pregnant again. Carried it to term. And shortly after birth, it passed away. Somewhere, somehow, she found the courage to try a 3rd time. And then a 4th time. I was born the 3rd. My sister the 4th. So my feeling is she was so brave and worked so hard to bring me here that I got to be at least as brave and work at least as hard to stay until my appointed time.
Amen. That, I don't even know how better to to close this episode except to say this. To whomever is hearing the sounds of our voices, if you're out there and you're in crisis, please call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Someone is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if you don't want to talk, you can live chat on the website 988. It is vitally important that everybody remembers that for themselves or for their friends. And Frank's contact info, as well as links and all the information we discussed during this chat, is going to be in the show notes with clickable links so you can navigate and go and reach out to Frank or reach 988 or just get more information. It's all going to be in the show notes. Frank, I appreciate you. I really do. I wish you the best trip ever and the best show ever on your cruise. I really do. I can't thank you enough for spending this time with me and my listeners. Now, guys, don't forget, you have to go to the Kandid Shop website, www.thekandidshop.com, Kandid with a K. Listen to some episodes, drop a review, sign up for the mailing list, share with your friends about this show because we're awesome.
Hey, Ken, you want to know how? Kristen, you want to know how? Let me close it like a comedian.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe, and tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, we hope you have no friends.
Thank you. I might have to use. I might steal that from you. Frank, thank you so much. Safe travels to you. Happy Thanksgiving. And I hope to see you in another TEDx, and it'll be 9 this time.
Yes. The only person on the planet who has 8 TED Talks besides me is Bill Gates. So good company.
You're in good company. Great minds think alike. All right, guys, until we meet again, I want you all to do what? Keep it safe, keep it healthy, and keep it candid.
I got the holiday blues, 'cause I miss you. I got the holiday blues, 'cause I miss you. Well, everyone is shopping and prancing along. Somehow I sit back and remember all our happy songs. This time last year, I was so happy because it was your energy that brought all the cheer. Now who cares about turkeys, pumpkins on trees, when I don't have you right next to me. turtle doves. When I'm morning, morning I love. Now I find in this moment, in respect and love, I thank God for the time I had with His child from above. While I wish you all great tidings, wish you grace and love, because I know what the holiday blues consist of. I had the holiday blues, 'cause I